Over the last 50 years, Kenya has made some remarkable progress. We have emerged not only as a leader on the racetrack, but also as a leader in the race to achieve health and development goals. Mortality for children under 5 has fallen to 74 deaths per 1,000 live births today. We have recorded tremendous progress in education. More than 90% of our children of primary school age are attending school. Life expectancy at birth has increased. The average Kenyan can now expect to live more than half a century. And we are now wealthier, with a steadily increasing gross national income. Now, let us take a closer look at the trend in income growth. Here, we have our trend graph, where we can look at changes and trends over time. And we're going to focus on the gross national income in Kenya. On the left axis, we have the gross national income per person. It ranges from 0 to 1,800 US dollars. This is standardized for what a US dollar can buy today in the country. And gross national income might be higher than what you're used to seeing for GDP, because it includes both the GDP as well as income received from outside the country. On the bottom, we have time in years, going from 1980 to 2009. And here is Kenya in 1980 with a gross national income of about 630 US dollars per person per year. This is about 47,000 Kenya shillings. Now, let us play this forward and see how gross national income has changed. And you can see that income starts increasing right away. The progress wavers over time, but when we come to 2009, there is a substantial increase of up to about 1,570 US dollars. This is about Kenya shillings 118,000. It means that we have 2.5 times the purchasing power per person today than we did 3 decades ago. As Kenya's gross national income increased, the percentage of families living in poverty went down from 54% to 46%. But that is almost half of all families still living in poverty. In fact, even though the percentage of Kenyans living in poverty has slightly dropped, the total number of people in poverty has increased. Looking at this graph, we see that in 1999, the population of Kenya was 28.7 million. 54% of the population, or about 15 million people, were living in poverty. Now, in 2009, the population of Kenya increased to approximately 39 million, and the proportion of people living in poverty is 46%. That equals about 18 million people. This means that the total number of people living in poverty in Kenya has actually increased by 2.5 million over the last 10 years. If we look at this a different way, we can really see the growth of people living in poverty in the last 10 years. Looking at the blue shaded area of this graph, you see how the number of people living in poverty is increasing every year. How can we reduce poverty in Kenya's families? One way is by addressing the reproductive health needs of the families with a special focus on family planning. Research has established that family planning and reproductive health services improve the health of women, boost social and economic development, and contribute to reducing poverty. In fact, women's economic contribution to the country is crucial to poverty reduction. Today, women make up about 44% of the labor force. When women are not healthy, the country suffers. When women and men cannot choose how many children to have and when to have them, then they are more likely to have many children, suffer from poor reproductive health, and it becomes harder for them to earn an income and meet the needs of their families and the nation. In Africa, Kenya was an early leader in focusing attention on family planning. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Kenya's family planning program was broad, comprehensive, and successfully reached all types of people in both urban and rural areas. During this time, many leaders spoke out in support of family planning. With our bubble graph, we can see the progress that Kenya made. Here, on the left axis, we have the lifetime number of births per woman, ranging from 0 to 8. On the bottom, we have the percentage of married women using any form of family planning, ranging from 0 to about 60%. Starting way back in 1978, Kenya had nearly 8 births per woman, and about 7% of married women were using family planning. When we put the graph in motion, we see that fertility starts dropping as family planning use increases. When we come to 2009, we see that Kenya has made dramatic progress. About 46% of married women are using any form of family planning, and the average births per woman is 4.6, which means between 4 and 5 births per woman. But if we zoom in and look carefully, we see that these trends were not always steady. In fact, from 1998 to 2003, the average number of births per woman actually increased from 4.7 to almost 5. And family planning use stalled. Why did this happen? Well, we know there were many reasons for the stall. The HIV epidemic diverted everyone's attention. Donor funding for family planning declined, as donor resources were also channeled to HIV, and leadership for family planning in Kenya was diverted to other challenges. All these caused disruptions in service provision and loss of momentum in outreach programs, and the family planning program in Kenya was weakened. When we compare Kenya over time with some other countries, we can see how much momentum was lost due to that stall in the late 1990s. Here now, we're looking specifically at Kenya and Morocco and comparing the changes in fertility in both countries on our trend graph. On the left axis, we're still looking at the average number of births per woman, ranging from 0 to 8.5. On the bottom, we have time in years, going from 1970 to 2009. The start year is 1973, and you can see that Kenya and Morocco have almost the same number of births per woman. On average, a woman in Kenya had 8 births in her lifetime, while in Morocco it was about 7. As we put this in motion, we see that both countries made very steady progress right away. We should note that in both countries, political leadership strongly supported family planning from the early 1970s, and community-based distribution programs were a central part of family planning service delivery. By 1998, Kenya's fertility had dropped from 8 to 4.7, while for Morocco it had dropped from 7 to about 3. We also mentioned that by 1998, attention for family planning in Kenya was diverted to other issues. Funding, leadership and outreach programs for family planning had waned. The community-based distribution program had also weakened. On the other hand, in Morocco, the leadership for family planning remained strong. In the mid-1990s, the government increased investment in family planning by starting to finance contraceptives rather than relying on donor support. When we continue forward, we can see the difference this made. Morocco continued on the same path, steadily reducing unmet need for family planning and reducing fertility all the way to less than 2.5. For Kenya, we see the fertility transition stall. Fertility now stands at an average of 4.6 births per woman, almost the same as it was 10 years ago. One of the reasons why Kenya has not been able to continue reducing fertility has to do with the unmet need for family planning. In Kenya, 1 out of every 4 women says that she would like to delay her first birth, space her next child by at least 2 years, or not have any more children. And yet, she is not using any form of contraception. This is what we refer to as unmet need for family planning. And unmet need can lead to large numbers of unplanned pregnancies. More than 1 million Kenyan women become pregnant every year without planning to have a child at that time. One desperate consequence of these unplanned pregnancies is unsafely performed abortions. This figure illustrates the relationship between contraceptive use and abortion in several countries. Looking at the relationship, you see, as the percent using modern contraception increases, the abortion rate goes down. That means that fewer abortions are taking place. For the case of Kenya, which is the green bar here, abortion is only legal to save the life of the mother. But data show that there are still abortions happening. And when compared to some other countries in the figure, Kenya has higher contraceptive use and fewer abortions taking place. But just think of how many more abortions could be averted if Kenya's contraceptive use were to increase to meet the unmet need for family planning that already exists. Another consequence of so many unplanned pregnancies is high-risk births. That is, a woman having children when she is too young, too old, or a woman having too many children, or children too closely spaced together. In these cases, there is increased risk to the health and life of both the mother and child. This contributes to Kenya's very high rate of maternal deaths. Kenya's maternal mortality ratio is estimated at 488 deaths per 100,000 live births. This translates to more than 7,000 deaths every year. The Millennium Development Goal is to reduce maternal deaths in Kenya to below 200 per 100,000 live births by the year 2015. Increasing family planning use is therefore one important step towards achieving that goal. And finally, these unplanned pregnancies contribute to high fertility and families having more children than they had planned. Now, some people may argue that Kenyans want big families and that it is our culture and tradition to have many children. In light of this argument, it's interesting to take a historical look at Kenya's population growth. We see that throughout most of Kenya's early history, the population remained very low, like in many countries around the world. Demographers estimate that in the year 1700s, Kenya's population was around 2 million. It took more than 200 years until past the year 1900 for the population to double to around 4 million. From there, it took less than 50 years for the population to double again to about 8 million by 1960. Thereafter came what is known as the 20th century population explosion, which happened all around the world. This was attributed to many factors, including improvements in public health services, such as vaccinations and antibiotics. Death rates declined, but birth rates did not. And Kenya's population has shot up to 38.6 million in 2009, even with so much loss of life with HIV and AIDS. Since the time Kenya attained her independence in 1963, large families have been often seen as an asset. But now, the needs of our nation have changed, and this asset is likely to become a liability if we do not manage it well. Given Kenya's high number of births per woman today, the population will continue to climb very rapidly. At our current growth rate, the population will nearly double from 38.6 million to almost 72 million by 2030. That is almost twice as many people in just one generation. And this growing population has brought about some amazing changes, especially in our cities. Some of you might recognize this picture, taken back in the 1960s. Yes, it's Valley Road, looking into downtown Nairobi from the hill. You can see a few cars and some very orderly traffic. And here are our roads today. A typical daily commute in Nairobi. It is one of the challenges that we face as we struggle to improve our infrastructure to keep pace with the needs of our rapidly growing cities. Let us now turn to the Google Earth satellite map. And we're taking a bird's eye look at Kenya from above, and we'll zoom all the way into downtown Nairobi. You can see the Kenyatta Conference Center at the top of your screen. Moving away from the city center, as we pass over the Upper Hill neighborhood towards Kenyatta National Hospital, we begin to appreciate how Nairobi has grown from a city of only 250,000 residents in 1960 to about 3 million residents today. We know that our cities have always been crowded, but as we move towards Kibera, you will see the crowding. People living closer and closer together under conditions where the city is not able to adequately provide access to safe water and sanitation. But this crowding is not limited to our cities. It's also there in the rural areas. Moving over to Kisii County, we see crowding here too. The population is expanding, but the land is not. Family farms are becoming smaller and smaller with time. This is putting pressure on each generation and creates conflict and competition for scarce resources. In 2009, 67% of rural farmers felt that they did not have enough land for their children to stay and live. When these farms are subdivided again for the next generation, how will our children raise crops to sustain their families? But we have sometimes heard that a fast population growth can increase the per capita GDP. This argument can only hold if you have a healthy workforce, enough jobs, educated workers and modern infrastructures in several sectors. The growing population means more people in need of social services, and that means more schools and expanded healthcare facilities. These are services that the government will be expected to provide. This will put pressure on the government's budget and may crowd out other spending and investment. This could mean slower economic growth for the country. How will we achieve our Vision 2030 if the population continues to grow so rapidly? We need to manage population growth so that economic growth can catch up. Family planning is the missing link to achieving these development goals. And we can start by meeting the reproductive health needs of Kenya's women and men to enable them to better plan and space their children. Increasing contraceptive use will reduce unintended pregnancies, unsafely performed abortions, and high-risk births. This will save the lives of both mothers and children. At the same time, parents will also be able to have the number of children they desire and invest in food, clothing, education, and health for each child. You remember those family planning messages we used to hear? Small family for better living. This will improve the quality of life. When the family is healthier, they're better placed to contribute to the economy. This will start to break the cycle of poverty in Kenya. It can be achieved, and in a relatively short time. Investing in family planning will help Kenya to reach the key Millennium Development Goals of reducing maternal death and reducing poverty. In 2005, the government of Kenya took an important first step to establish a budget line item on family planning. And if Kenya were to increase that investment to 5.3 billion Kenya shillings, so as to meet the current need for family planning, that investment would translate into savings. These savings are possible because as women have fewer children, the government will spend less money to meet the needs of the population. The government can then save money on costs related to education, immunization, water and sanitation, maternal health, and malaria. You can see that we can save more than we spend. In fact, within 5 years, we will have saved over 20 billion Kenya shillings. The cost savings that we gain in these 5 sectors, which are all instrumental in meeting the Millennium Development Goals, outweigh the additional costs of family planning by a factor of almost 4 to 1. A lot is possible for Kenya's economic future. This is the type of progress we have seen in many countries that have been able to manage their population growth. So, going back to our bubble graph one last time. We had earlier talked about gross national income in Kenya, but this time we're going to look at it a little differently. We will focus on the whole world. We are again looking at the number of children per woman on the left axis, ranging from 0 to about 8.5. On the bottom axis, we have gross national income per person, ranging from $200 to about $40,000. The bubbles on the graph are countries. The size of the bubble corresponds to the population size of the country. The color indicates the region. Starting with the red, we have East Asia and the Pacific. Orange is Central Asia and Europe. Yellow represents North and South America. Green is the Middle East and North Africa. The light blue is South Asia, and dark blue is for sub-Saharan Africa. Let's take a look at a few of these countries. The big red bubble here is China, with 3 births per woman and about $250 gross national income per person in 1980. The orange are European and Central Asian countries, clustered at the bottom right, with few children per woman and high gross national income per person. Green includes some of those oil-rich Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. So they stretch further out to the right, with higher income per person. The dark blue is sub-Saharan Africa, clustered at the top left, with many children per woman and low income. Kenya is here, in the upper left, with about 7.5 births per woman and a gross national income of only about $630. Let us play it forward and see what happens. As we observe the trends over time, we see that as women have fewer and fewer children, the bubbles move down. Gross national income per person increases as the countries move to the right. When we get to the year 2008, the world is a very different place. Although the sub-Saharan African countries have made progress, they still have many children per woman and low gross national income per person. So where is Kenya now? Here's Kenya, with between 4 and 5 children per woman and a gross national income of more than $1,500 per person. You can see that Kenya is doing better than many of those dark blue sub-Saharan African countries. We had earlier compared Kenya with Morocco. You can see here that Morocco has lower fertility and gross national income of over $4,000. We can also see that some sub-Saharan African countries, such as South Africa and Botswana, are also doing very well with low fertility and high economic growth. One of the reasons why many of these countries have been able to make so much economic progress is that women started having fewer children. This set the stage for the country to better manage its population growth and hence reduce the constraints on economic growth. However, this kind of economic progress is not automatic. It requires a series of investments, including expanding family planning programs so women and couples can plan and space their children, investing in health systems to improve child survival and health in general, improving educational enrollment, especially at the secondary level, and stabilizing economic conditions to create more jobs and make sure that there are economic opportunities for both young men and women. Stabilizing economic conditions is a very critical issue for Kenya because youth unemployment is already a major problem. In order to achieve our Vision 2030 goals, a reinvestment in family planning is needed. In today's financially strapped environment, family planning is a best buy. If Kenya is to remain a leader in the race to achieving the Millennium Development and Vision 2030 goals, it's time to step up the pace. We cannot bask in our past successes before reaching our goals. We know that Kenya can press on in the lead because we have done it before in the 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s. But we need support for the Kenya we want. And we have a call to action for those of you who are with us today. We need to ensure that contraceptive supplies are available in all healthcare facilities by increasing the family planning budget for the nation and its counties. We need to expand information, education, and communication programs for family planning, so that messages about family planning services and supplies reach the men and women who can benefit. We need to make use of our community-owned resource persons to help bring health services and family planning supplies to the people who need them. Everyone has a role to play. But, most importantly, we encourage leaders at all levels to speak out in favor of family planning and publicly demonstrate their support for this important link to help Kenya achieve the MDGs and Vision 2030 goals. A number of political and religious leaders have spoken out in support of family planning. Upon learning the latest Kenya census results, the Minister for Planning said, "This high rate of population growth has adverse effects on spending on infrastructure, health, education, environment, water, and other social and economic sectors. Investment will be required in family planning services to improve the welfare of Kenyans." His Excellency, President Mwai Kibaki, Kenya's third president, is also a family planning champion. His statement in 1982 that family planning is African was an important cornerstone for Kenya's family planning program. It remains a key for the present and the future. Thank you for your attention.